Hey guys, welcome to Hot Mics. Please hit subscribe. 1 week ago, Hayden Panettiere was found unresponsive in a Greenville, South Carolina Airbnb. 911 was called by her boyfriend, Brian Hickerson, and his brother, Zach, who attempted CPR until the paramedics arrived. She was pronounced dead 40 minutes after that. Today, an exclusive interview with the girl next door who saw it all, Hayden's Hollywood neighbor, Mia Terrazas. We still don't have an exact cause of death for Hayden, but there is zero doubt in the hearts and minds of anyone who knew her, even in the slightest, that her 8-year relationship with Brian Hickerson was the root cause. He was violent, abusive, and by all accounts, dangerous. You're about to hear Mia's account. But of course, he was there when she died because he could have been any number of times before when they were together. His history of abusing others, especially Hayden, was long and consistent. In October of 2018, in Greenville, South Carolina, police responded to a domestic assault in progress, a call involving Brian Hickerson and his father, David. A reporting based on the incident said that officers saw Brian chasing David through a kitchen. The father, David, had apparent blood and bruising, but said his injuries came from a fall and he declined medical care. Hayden was there. She was listed as a witness. No charges. It would appear that Brian's father refused to press. May 2nd, 2019, Los Angeles PD in Hollywood, the Hollywood division, arrested Brian on suspicion of felony domestic violence involving Hayden. This would not be the only time. He was taken into custody at about 2:24 in the morning. He was held on $50,000 bail and released a day later. It's believed that Hayden bailed him out. He was charged. He pleaded not guilty, and the case was later dismissed after prosecutors could not secure a material witness. Then on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2020, this one is in her book that came out this past May. This is Me, A Reckoning by Hayden Panettiere. Jackson, Wyoming, Teton County. The Teton County Sheriff's Office was notified of a disturbance at a Jackson home around 1:50 in the morning. Brian was arrested and booked on suspicion of domestic battery. The caller told police that an intoxicated man was locked out of the private residence because he had punched his girlfriend in the face. She told police that she had been in the bedroom with Hickerson when he, quote, started throwing her around and punching her. The documents state that Hayden's face was red and swollen and had a scrape and swelling on her left hand. Hickerson was released from jail on a $5,000 bond later that day. Brian was in the driveway upon the deputy's arrival, and he claimed that Hayden was in the house, saying he beat the F out of me. Hickerson avoided answering questions about whether he punched the then 30-year-old Hayden Panettiere. However, Hickerson claimed he hired a private chef to be there so he wouldn't be accused of all this bullshit, he said. The police talked to the chef on the phone and were allegedly told that he left around 1 o'clock in the morning, so he wasn't there, although he did say in documents that the couple had been arguing earlier in the evening. July 14th, 2020, Hayden files a restraining order against Brian. July 16, 2020, LA prosecutors filed a much broader 8-count case covering a series of alleged incidents during their relationship, specifically the Wyoming assault on Hayden and the LA assault in Hayden's condo. All included 4 felony counts of injuring a spouse or girlfriend, 2 felony assault with a deadly weapon counts, 1 misdemeanor or battery count, and critically 1 felony count of dissuading a witness from prosecuting a crime, i.e. talking Hayden out of it. He was charged with 8 counts, 7 felonies and 1 misdemeanor. Prosecutors specifically alleged that Brian Hickerson tried to prevent Hayden identified as the victim or the witness from causing a complaint or causing prosecution to proceed. April 2021, Brian Hickerson received 45 days in jail, 4 years of formal probation, 52 domestic violence classes, restitution, and a 5-year protective order. Remaining counts were dismissed under the plea deal. Hayden made a statement saying that she was going public about this abuse to inspire others in abusive relationships to seek help. Quote, "I'm prepared to do my part to make sure this man never hurts anyone again." Well, she meant it then. He faced up to 10 years for his crimes, according to this story. Just 3 days before her death, Hickerson attempted to have those charges expunged from his record. He claims he had fulfilled the conditions of his probations. In the August 13th hearing, just 10 days ago, prosecutors opposed the petition, citing his continued drug use. Neither Hickerson nor his lawyer were even present. They cited the TMZ video with Charlie Neff. You know, this one.
Anything before that you asked Hayden to keep out of the book?
Yeah.
What did you not want her to talk about in the book?
So there's a story where I was drunk, right? Aiden was standing across the room, and I had a phone in my hand, and I said, Hayden, I said, I'll give you 10 seconds to run as fast as you can before I throw it at you.
You don't need a prosecutor to tell you, but the prosecutor did say during that interview, Hickerson speaks for 15 minutes about the abuse that's been documented in Hayden's best-selling book, and he makes several admissions about it. We all heard it. Brian Hickerson's apparent condition in the interview was especially significant to his request, the prosecution added, because of his lawyer's representations that Hickerson is seeking this expungement because he's now sober. Oh, yeah? He was also arrested in 2 separate incidents, August 2nd, 2025 at Barney's Beanery in West Hollywood. In that case was declined for prosecution due to insufficient evidence, and he was arrested again 4 days later on the August 6th and charged with 1 misdemeanor count of being under the influence of a controlled substance. The DA's office told People magazine the court granted Hickerson judicial diversion and ordered him to complete 10 Narcotics Anonymous sessions, to obey all laws and to refrain from any drugs or alcohol. The DA's office said Brian Hickerson needs to complete all of that before he can be a free man. I don't think anyone has ever held Brian Hickerson to account. His book should be This Is Brian, a reckoning that has yet to befall me. A very long rap sheet that paints the picture of a woman beating, drunken, low-life loser of a man who, in my view, by the very nature of his violent and abusive ways, elevated the self-esteem of Hayden Panettiere, a young woman who'd been drained of hers. The only place that she could appear as the good one was standing next to him. Theirs was a totally toxic relationship. It thrived on the darkest of attachments. But Brian Hickerson is still out there. He's never been held truly to account. And he absolutely needs to be. The New York Times reporting now that Brian Hickerson tried to pawn some of Hayden's possessions, including a vintage guitar. She was shocked to find many of her possessions in his storage unit. The Times also is reporting he was banned from her book tour in May. Barnes & Nobles in New York City was given strict instructions not to allow Brian inside. Hayden also had personal security there at the time as well. Brian has not responded to that, and we'd like him to respond to a lot more, including that. Mia Terrazas lived next to Hayden on the same side of the hall in their housing complex. She was the neighbor, often kept awake in the wee hours of the morning by yelling, screaming, crying, crashing furniture. She and Hayden crossed paths often. Their parking spots are next to each other in the building. I'm pleased to welcome Mia Terrazas. Mia, thank you so much for spending some time with us. If I could just ask you off the bat, how did you receive the news that Hayden had died?
Thank you for having me. I was very, very upset, and I knew immediately that, or I suspected that Brian was with her when she passed. It's just devastating to hear. I saw her on the elevator probably, I want to say 8 days before she passed, and she was with Brian, but she seemed like, I don't know, just that she was a little bit more chipper or something. And yeah, it's just really shocking and sad, but really not surprising given their history.
Yeah, maybe she was thinking this is the time that he will keep drinking, but not keep, committing the same behavior over and over again. Um, when you and Hayden were friendly, when she first moved into the lofts where you live, um, did she invite you over? Did you strike up a bit of a friendship?
She did invite me over, and I had met her previously. Had a brief friendship with her mother, and I also knew Jansen, and she had, in a text message, invited me over. And shortly after that, I saw Brian, and it was just really difficult to communicate with her after he showed up. So that get together never happened.
Oh, what was she like when he was not around? Did you get to interact with her in a way? Was she different when he was there as opposed to when he was not?
She was very different. She just seemed like alive. And, whenever I would see her with Brian, she was just quite subdued and almost like her, body language was completely different. Her mannerisms, just like in the way she spoke. And when she wasn't with him, she just seemed happier and I don't know, she was just a real bit of a character, I think, in her, because I'd see
Yeah.
her taking out the trash in her pajamas and, things like that. And she's just really sweet.
Cute personality. I mean, I spent a lot of time with Hayden over the years, just many interviews, and there for the entire run of Heroes and Nashville and all of that. But uh, in her book, she describes Brian as a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, always remorseful and apologetic after he sobered up. Did you ever interact with Brian when she was not around?
I did. At one time I was going to take the elevator and he came and was also going to take the elevator and I decided to take the stairs. And it was just very odd because I have a excruciating, um, neurological condition. And I was moving down the stairs very slowly and he was right behind me and letting me know he was there. And another occasion I asked him, was he still living in the building? And he told me, yes, he was living in the building. And he said, I know Hayden has introduced us, and this was only a few months ago. So he should have known my name because I saw her plenty of times with him. And he said, Hayden introduced us, but I've forgotten your name. And I didn't answer him. And then he like started to walk after me and said, I didn't get your name. What is your name? And I just kept walking toward the elevator. I wasn't going to engage him, but he could just be very intimidating. And then other times he seemed just completely out of it.
What was he just like? You could tell the substances were kind of always going.
That's what it looked like to me. It looked that there was always some kind of substance and or potentially mental. Um, yeah,
Well, if
like some
after
type
enough
of,
substances,
yeah,
I mean,
I
you
suppose. Yeah. He
yeah.
just, Yeah, he says it. I mean, there are videos out there of him that he himself has posted, and I think he describes who he is better than I could.
Did you talk to him
You
like the,
know,
the TMZ video where he's slurring and he seems to be on something? And this is back in May when the book came out, and he admits, to abusing her, right there in the interview. He seems to be on something. Is that something you've encountered before?
absolutely. Yeah. I don't think I've ever encountered him where I thought he seemed like just an average person or that he wasn't on something. Yeah, definitely.
Mia, can you tell us about the time you witnessed that Hayden was taken from the apartment complex on a gurney after a particular fight with Brian?
I actually saw her being removed on a gurney twice, within a couple year span. And although her face wasn't, I wouldn't say it was necessarily beaten up, but I just saw red marks on her. And at one point, the fireman and EMT kept ringing the call box to try to get in, and someone was not letting them in and they were unable to access the door, and I ran downstairs and let them in and rode up in the elevator with them. And I had tried talking to them at that time. That was the second time she was removed, and I told them that I was very concerned, and could she at least separate Brian from her so she could go on the ambulance alone or something. And I got mocked for that. It
Mocked by
was
whom?
the EMT, or the I can't recall if it was the EMT or the fireman. They were waiting for the elevator, and he, I waved motion to him and asking if he could come over so I could speak with him, and he was like just acting very animated, kind of like, "Oh, you want to talk to me?" And just yeah, completely just dismissed any concerns that I had. And the reason I had asked, could, because I knew Brian was the one who was not allowing them into the building, and I had suspected perhaps she called the EMT or the fire, because she didn't want to file another police report. But clearly she had red marks on her. And I asked her if she was okay, and she said yes, but it didn't appear to me that she was. And Brian was hovering over the whole time.
Did you ever get a chance to talk to her and be like, what are you doing? I mean, it's not like your place to, I guess, to, you hope family and friends and her best friends and, mom, dad, somebody is going to interject and say, you've got to get away. Um, did you ever say to her, hey, he's not good for you. Stop. You're a sweet kid.
I I did. I wouldn't say I directly said anything. I did, just let her know that I was here, if she ever needed anything. And it's really interesting. I did try to broach that topic a couple times, but it's like she just wasn't having it for whatever reason. She couldn't hear anything, discouraging about Brian. I don't know what it was, honestly. So I figured that I had more of a chance of, if she ever needed help, if I didn't, tell her anything about that, or I could tell she just didn't want to talk about it, essentially.
Did folks in the building talk about this? Did you see other neighbors and were they like, oh, Brian, everybody, was he, one of those sort of constant, omnipresent type of evil characters in the building?
He was, yeah. It certainly appeared that way, since I work from home, and I would just see him all the time. And it looked like he didn't have a job. At one point, we had those posters up saying to call 911, and I saw him in the garage. They called the sheriff, and I was texting with the HOA saying, we have to get this character out of our building, and they told me he was going to rehab, and he wouldn't be around anymore. But I never saw him gone ever. I would just constantly see him, just yeah, hanging around, working on his car. He had fallen asleep in the car one time and it was all revved up and carbon monoxide filled the garage. And another time he was working on he had an old Bronco and apparently when Hayden threw him out, he would have to live in the Bronco. That's what I heard because one of our HOA members said that, at least he doesn't have to sleep in his car now, since he's going to rehab. But he was like left his car running again with the carbon monoxide filling the garage.
How did building management allow him, when he's a terror to, everyone who lives there, to even be on premises? And you mentioned something about an HOA sign. What was what was the sign?
Well, at one point, they had put up signs, and I'm not entirely sure who put them up, but that, if we saw Brian anywhere on the property, to call the sheriff immediately, to call 911, that he would be trespassing. And would say a week later, they started coming down, and I had made copies and I tried hanging them up again, and they would come right back down. And then I contacted the HOA association several times, and they said, that Hayden would be escorting him in the common areas. And at one point, I had told one of the members that I hope that, that I'm a CCW carrier, concealed carrier, and that I hoped if he ever did anything to me, I was a good enough shot to not kill him, because I was that afraid of him. He's just always it's hard to say why you're afraid of somebody, but he just gave me the willies from the day that I saw him. And then when I looked into his history, so yeah, but he seemed like a menace on the property, and I wondered why they didn't just force him out, because I feel also like, us as a community, we were telling Hayden that we accepted that. And, I thought we need to come together as a community and say, absolutely not. He's not going to be on our property. There was a no contact order that a judge had placed, and it only ended in May of 2026. And I would see him all the time up until, up until she passed.
You have a concealed carrier, so you carry a firearm. Is he the reason for that, or was that before?
No, he is not the reason. However, I have to say that when I knew he was in the building, I wouldn't go downstairs to even take down the recycling or anything without my firearm on me. um yeah, I yeah, it just terrified me that much. And I had warned someone else who was moving into the building. She has a very diminutive stature like Hayden, and I told her, don't take this as my word, but look up his history and you'll see why you just need to be careful in the garage and the common areas.
How many times would you say, and what, maybe the worst time, when you could you hear them, fighting through the walls? Could you hear a row? Could you hear the arguing and the screaming? And did others hear it? And how often?
I'm uncertain if others heard it. It seemed like a topic that no one here really wanted to talk about. I would hear it frequently when I had my windows open, especially because I'm just, one unit away, and could definitely hear it. Just sounded like muffled screaming. I don't know, sometimes there would be like loud noises there. I don't know, at one point he had ripped apart her apartment and made it uninhabitable with a sledgehammer. And I didn't know, after I found out about that, I didn't know if that's possibly what it was. Some of the noises, I was uncertain about that, but yeah, it just sounded very like hostile.
You're a nice woman, and you obviously, a good neighbor, and yet there must be a bit of a helpless feeling, because you can't demand that he be taken away. You can't take out a restraining order. You can't, physically intervene. But it must have been, you talk about when she died, you knew instinctively he had to
Absolutely.
be there.
Yeah.
had to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That was my very first thought, that he was there, and one can't help but wonder if he, lured her away somehow, and thinking that it wouldn't be investigated under such scrutiny. And up until that time, I had called the non-emergency sheriff's office to find out what could be done about this to keep this man out. And I called so many times hoping for a different answer, and of course, never, I just couldn't do anything about it. But yeah, I wasn't surprised. That was my first thought before they started announcing that, he was present during the death. It's really tragic. And one wonders how he could not be involved given his past with her. That's my thought. How could he not be involved?
You said you saw Hayden 8 days before she died in the building. Was she with Brian at the time?
She was. And I was surprised because of just the dynamics between them seemed a little bit different. Like I noticed she was more, just like distant from him and more engaged with me. And I was really paying attention to that. And I thought that, the thought that occurred in my mind is maybe she's considering leaving him. And that's why I was wondering if it had anything to do with, their trip and her death, because I did feel that, she was thinking about leaving him.
Well, yeah, she never. God, it's just I mean, look, you've lived some life. You you have experience like me. I've never been in a toxic relationship, but I said earlier, I was just, in my opinion, was thinking that she felt a deep sort of self-loathing about herself. I mean, the moment in life that she has to give her child away to the father because she, as the mother, you know, is not capable of taking care. There's got to be a deep hole that's almost impossible to fill, after that in some sort of healthy way. And you see this guy, Brian, I mean, it's almost like he was, by standing next to him, by comparison, almost like a seesaw effect, she could feel good about herself because no one
Exactly.
is as bad as
Yeah,
Brian, right? It's like
exactly. That,
an unhealthy
yeah.
elevation of self-esteem when you are suffering with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seemed that she was really struggling with her self-esteem, and just being confident. And I think also just having some type of imposter syndrome, like a lot of people in those positions do. And I think also just, people demanded so much of her, and with her, just everything that had happened. And it's my understanding that Vlad actually did not want the child to grow up with Brian, because he knew that, they were together. And that's why the child was taken by him to be raised by his mother. I've met his mother. One time we had gone to the airport to pick up Hayden, and I rode back with the mother and the baby. And she seemed like just such a wonderful, I mean, I think those guys are great from what I understand, but she just seemed like such a wonderful person. So I know she's in really good hands with the mother. And
When Leslie Vogel, Hayden's mother, and they had their own issues in their relationship. She documents it in the book. Um, but when she was around, or Hayden's father Skip, when he was around, was Brian ever there when either of the parents were there, or was that his time to step back?
I I never met Skip. At one point, I would say about approximately 4 months. Well, maybe no, this might have been, yeah, it was probably longer. It was probably almost a year ago that I saw Leslie in the garage with Hayden, and they were both talking to Brian. But then the sheriff came and, told him to leave the premises. And it just was yeah, it was very contentious between, Hayden and Leslie, it appeared to be.
God, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
an actor or an actress, you know, they're in the attention business. You know what I mean? Your eyeballs is what they, you know, they crave your attention. They perform, you know, for people. And, you know, Brian's attention on her was constant, never healthy, it seems, but constant, malevolent, but obsessive. And, you know, if, if attention is what you're after, this guy seemed all consumed with her. And it feels so twisted and backwards, but
It's very twisted and backwards, and honestly, I don't ever, usually when you look at a couple and you can see or, sense some type of energy between them. And I personally never observed him caring for her in any way. He didn't seem to contribute in any way. And I often wondered if, he just got lucky and met her and it gave him a place to live and,
yeah,
something to do. That's
someone
what
to
it felt
freeload off of.
like.
I mean,
Exactly.
The New York Times just reported that, you know, that they many of her possessions were in a storage locker of hers. He took a guitar from her. He took possessions and she found out about it and she, you know, I don't know why she would act surprised, but also never caring for her. I mean, you know, when they called 911 and it, you know, paramedics came and they were trying to save Hayden's life. It's, you know, the report is police report says that Zach was, and NBC reported that Zach, Brian's brother, was consumed with emotion while they were trying to save, and Brian had none until after they pronounced her dead, which means he either finally got hit with some type of reality connected with him, or he had seen her in this position so many times before and been like, she'll get out. I mean, she'll
Quite
survive. But I mean,
frankly, yeah, I
negligent.
heard about that. They've told several, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. They've told
Yeah.
several stories about that. And my first thought was, did he show relief after she was pronounced dead? Did he do something to her and then, showed
She
emotion
couldn't
after
tell
she
about
was
it.
dead? No, she couldn't tell about it. Maybe perhaps he was, not showing emotion because he was fearful of what she might say, about what had happened. I just found that very odd. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Um,
And well, we were saying 3 days before she died, he was trying to get his record expunged.
exactly.
He attempted to have the charges against him from, you know, all of those beatings expunged. His claims, you know, he claims he had fulfilled the conditions of his probation. And 3 days before, in the hearing, prosecutors opposed the petition, citing his continued drug use and all of that. So, you know, they had major legal issues between them at the time that she got on a plane and went to South Carolina with him. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's my belief that they, as far as I can tell, they never lived apart. And, she was saying that because she wanted to promote her book and go back to movies. And, and it's really hard to tell people that you're living with someone who, in her words, had, beat her face so badly she couldn't leave her apartment for weeks. And, it's that's just my opinion that she wanted to promote her book because she said that she had left him and didn't want him to hurt anyone else. It's just such a tragedy. And I just don't understand, my interactions with him. I just felt like there was just nothing interesting or engaging about him or, compelling enough. And it seemed like he's not even like enough of a personality to be a whole person. That was just my interactions and my thoughts about him.
I'm going to share something that that I spoke. I know a woman who had dated Brian Hickerson years ago. Another woman who and I asked her, you know, I was told, and I reached out and I asked her about Brian, and she shared a text, and it said, "I'm sorry, I was abusive." This is him sending it to her. I'm sorry I was abusive. You were nothing but kind. And I'm sorry I treated you the way I did. To which she responded, "Who is this?" And he sends, "Brian Hickerson." And she says, "Look, I hope you find some kind of healing so you don't hurt anyone else, but you need to lose this number and do not text me again." Well handled. And then he said, "Hayden told me I should reach out to you. I'm sorry. 100% I will lose your number." And then apparently tried calling and sent a message right after saying, "Sorry, that was Hayden calling you." So there she was trying to help him, allegedly make amends with someone else he'd been abusive to. So he's clearly just, and he chased his father around and beating him when Hayden was a witness.
Absolutely.
So he was
Yep.
abusive, across the board. But there's another woman, and I'm sure there are others. And the fact that this son of a B is running around still without his own reckoning. The law enforcement has failed to, take a long track record and do something about this guy. I mean, it's
I
insane that he.
don't I don't understand it. I never saw an ounce of remorse in him. He just seemed to, at one point, I remember walking in the garage and it was almost like he was trying to stare me down and intimidate me, or, the time that he followed me down the stairs. And again, I'm going extremely slow because I'm in severe pain. And I just felt like he's very arrogant and he just wants to have his way with everything. And I'm sorry, when someone's sorry, they don't do it again. And he had years to, stop these types of behaviors. He was in a bar brawl just around the corner at the Sunset Marquee, around the corner from here. That was all over the news. And, he clearly just, he didn't care about, really about anything except himself. And, I can't help but wonder if Hayden put him up to that and he did it just to appease her. One of my clients who is an attorney was there at the bar, and she conveyed a story that he, as she put it, lobbed a loogie on her and got upset at her. And then there was some words said about somebody not leaving a large enough tip. And she ran out of the bar. She was terrified and he chased her down. And that's when the fight occurred. I'm not even clear if it actually started with her, but um, yeah, it was just a story that was conveyed to me. And I have no reason to not believe it.
The number one reason that Hayden suffered, being hired later on, after Nashville and in the last several years is him. And,
Exactly.
wanting to work and, in a very competitive field, there are a lot of actresses. She's got a leg up being Hayden Panettiere, but, you know, it's amazing. Not even that, your craft, what you love to do, how you work is completely impeded because
What
of this
exactly? Why was
relationship. Every director knows, every person knows, everyone sees that TMZ video, couldn't get her out of her own way
exactly?
because of that.
Yeah, he was showing up with her on sets and, with her work. And why would anyone show up with her? And, that's just jealousy and stalking in my mind. And she didn't seem to want to be with him some of the time when, I'd see her leaving in a limo or something like that. She didn't want to seem to be with him.
We're talking to Mia Terrazas. She was Hayden Panettiere's neighbor, lived one unit away in their apartment complex for many, many years. So she knew her well. And you talked about the garage before. Your parking space, I understand it, was next to Hayden's because of the location, of the apartments. And you said, I think it's at Monday morning after the announcement of her death, her parking space, there was a car in it that you had never seen before. What do you make of that?
I don't know because it would have arrived very early in the morning. So I saw the car there, and I'd walked down to look at her apartment, and I heard someone speaking in the apartment. And then a couple hours later, I went down, to see if I could still hear voices there. And I had noticed that their ring camera had been tried to be ripped from the wall, or that someone had placed black electrical tape over the speaker and the camera. And I don't have any idea what was going on. The car's now gone.
And it
So,
wasn't there before.
um, no, no. I was just concerned that perhaps someone, was going through her things and taking things out of the apartment. And by the way, I would always see they drop the packages, downstairs and in the lobby, and we kind of have to go through them and see which are ours because they're just put on a big table. And I would see packages to Brian all the time, addressed to Hayden's address. And I saw one the day after she passed, actually, that was delivered the day after she passed, addressed to Brian. So, yeah, I have no idea who was in that apartment.
Did authorities take the package away, or is it still there? Is it?
It's gone. Yeah, I don't know who picked it up, but
But the
yeah,
ring camera was
interesting.
ripped from the wall, black tape over the camera lens.
Someone,
Somebody
yeah,
you
had
hear
tried to rip it off. Exactly.
and you hear somebody in the apartment. Did you ever see that person come out?
No, I didn't see who it was. Yeah. I mean, the only I tried to imagine who might have a key. I thought didn't look like Leslie's car, or she could have driven up in a different car, but that car stayed for a couple nights. And it didn't seem to move. So yeah, I just found that interesting. And I that was the first I heard at the onset of your show about Brian with the guitar and pawning things. And I thought either he sent someone there to get things out, or, clean out the apartment to sell off her items. That was my first thought.
He's in South Carolina, in Greenville, but maybe, who knows? I mean, just riffing here, but maybe sent somebody to the apartment to remove. I
I
don't know.
wouldn't doubt it.
In which case,
Unfortunately, yeah.
we may not ever know. What's the traffic like in the apartment now? Is it quiet? Is it abandoned? Have authorities been in and out? Is there anyone there?
As far as I can tell, no one's there. It looks like it's been quiet for a while now. So it's a mystery to me. Yeah, I don't know. I know at one point I believe that she did not have a mortgage note on that unit because, they purchased it when her family came from New York and Hayden was new to Hollywood. And she had it for many years and then moved her mother out, and then she moved in, I think about 4 or 5 years ago. And at one point, I know it was transferred into Brian's name, which was very concerning to me. And it was just an accident how I even found that out. Um, but yeah, and that was really, I'm just feel concerned for that, and I hope that's not the case.
I wonder if it's still in his name.
I wondered about that. Yeah.
Well, we'll
I was
definitely
more
look into
trying,
that.
yeah, I was more trying to find out just about his, it's when I first started looking up his, legal history. And yeah.
Well, Mia Terrazas, I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry that you had to witness all of this stuff and could never see, the outcome that everyone wanted to see, and that is her to be able to get away from this person and to say, lose my number like this other, woman did.
Wow, I hadn't
It's a
heard
horrible
about that
feeling.
before. It really is. It just makes you wonder how much Hayden was, suffering to after, losing her child and her work. And I remember at one point I became just very upset, and I told my husband how angry I was. I said, she's lost everything over this man, and like he can't even form a coherent sentence or show any empathy, or like he just has this like flat affect, like a psychopath or something. And I just can't imagine who would give up their life for someone like that who didn't contribute anything. It was devastating.
He's a yeah sponge. Did your husband ever have any interaction with Brian himself?
He, not that I'm aware of, but I know he did see him in the building a couple times. And my husband is a medical doctor, but he studied psychiatry a long time ago when he first was, doing his residencies. And he said that he just there's something not right about, in his opinion, about Brian. And he said, be careful, going into the garage or in the building. I mean, he was worried about me, even though, as I mentioned, I carry a, Glock pistol with me, and every time in the building after I knew Brian was here, but he was concerned.
Yeah, I bet. Well, Mia, I can't thank you enough for sharing your insight. We're all grieving Hayden Panettiere. She was such a sweet, sweet kid. I liked her a lot, and yeah, I'm so sad it ended this way. And but thank you for your insight a lot. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you
It was
for having me, and let's just hope that they investigate this thoroughly and find out what really happened. And I don't know if there'll ever really be closure, but I guess that's about as close as you could get, is having some definitive answer to what occurred there, and who it occurred around. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mia. Well, that's
Okay.
you know, that's we you hear these stories all the time, and when it's Hayden Panettiere, somebody you kind of who grew up in front of our eyeballs, you feel connected to it, and I certainly do, and it is absolutely heartbreaking. But as the details come out, I hope the investigation is thorough, and I'm gonna say it. I hope there is a reckoning for this guy, because he is absolutely a lowlife of the highest order. How he gained such proximity to her and such a Svengali like grasp, over her is just heartbreaking. It really is. Thanks for being with us on Hot Mics. We're very grateful to Mia Terrazas, Hayden Panettiere. Rest in peace. Please hit subscribe, and that's it. Bye bye.